I grew up in a small coastal town where life was simple and steady. My family had deep roots in the community, with my father running a successful insurance business that made our name synonymous with trust. My early years were shaped by the predictable rhythms of small-town life, where I found comfort in studying finances, drawn to the patterns and logic of money and markets. By the time I earned my finance degree, I was determined to follow in my father's footsteps, though with my own unique approach. I wanted to help people grow their wealth steadily, focusing more on caution than on risk. Starting my own practice wasn't easy, especially in a town where everyone already knew me as JT, Joe Washburn's son. But I worked hard, building on the solid reputation my father had established. Over time, I managed to carve out my niche, earning the trust of clients who appreciated my conservative approach to managing their finances. However, as the months went by, it became clear that the town was too small to fulfill my ambitions. I needed to expand, so I began splitting my time between our town and a nearby larger city, hoping to grow my client base and secure my future. This weekend, it was our turn to host the gathering. About once every month to 6 weeks, our close-knit group of 3 couples, would meet, usually at one of our homes. The usual crowd included Sally, Anna's friend, and her husband Carl, along with our neighbor Jackie and her husband Trent. Occasionally others would join, but this was the core group. We were all in our late 20s, none of us with kids. Sally and Carl had decided not to have any, and while Trent had 2 from a previous marriage, they lived with his ex, though he longed to gain custody. There was always food, drinks, and some sort of theme. Sometimes we played Trivial Pursuit, cards, or watched a sporting event on TV. When we met at Trent's house, we swam in his pool if the weather allowed. The girls, particularly Sally and my Anna, would organize these parties with a bit of phoning around to make sure we could gather enough people on a particular date. Anna loved chatting and gossiping on the phone and enjoyed organizing. She's a busty, curvy woman with wavy, light brown hair. She's a bit of a flirt, which sometimes annoys me. She loves the attention, but as far as I know, she's never crossed any lines while we've been together. I grew up in a coastal town in Oregon, where my family still lives. I graduated from the State University in finance and passed the exams to become a certified financial planner. I was somewhat introverted but passionate about studying money, markets, statistics, and the history of our economic system. My dad sold insurance in our town, and his honest and solid reputation gave me credibility in the local financial world. In fact, I was named after my father. He was Joseph Washburn, and I was called JT. I started renting an office in his building and worked hard to set up meetings with folks, explaining my strategy for their money. I want your money to grow steadily but conservatively, I would tell them. I was affiliated with a national company and received a lot of financial data from them. I also spent hours doing my own research, which I really enjoyed. My first year was moderately successful. My clients saw good, solid returns and their portfolios outpaced the market. I enjoyed sharing office space with my dad, and many of his long-term clients became mine as well. I made it a point to meet with my clients regularly, to get to know them better, and to offer personal customer service. They appreciated the contact. As I began my second year, one thing became clear. There wasn't enough business in our town to make a good living. I had my own financial goals, and as a student of economics, I realized that I couldn't support myself with just the business in this town. The weather was nice for our party, so we decided to eat outside. We had a large deck with a barbecue and an outdoor kitchen area. "What do you want the theme to be tonight?" I asked Anna. "Let's play a game," she said. "We'll play a fun and funny game that everyone will love. Doesn't that sound good, JT?" she gushed. There was a little competition to see who could have the most fun at these parties. I mostly enjoyed the company, the food, and the drinks. I admit I do like my wine, and there have been a few times when I had a glass or two too many. "What game?" I asked. "Don't worry, JT, I'll figure it out. You just get the barbecue ready." That was fine with me. As I was getting things set up, my mind wandered to the group coming over tonight. First, there's Sally and Carl. Sally and Anna have been friends since high school. Sally is a little overweight but proportionate. Carl is a diesel mechanic who works at a big shop in our city. He's easygoing and doesn't seem to mind when Sally flirts and shows off. He's a big guy, probably about 6'3". I like him okay, but I probably wouldn't choose him as a friend if not for the connection between Anna and Sally. Jackie and Trent are our neighbors, though I can't recall how we became so close to them. Jackie is plain-faced but has a great body. Not the curvy softness of Anna, more of a taut leanness. She's smart, and out of the whole group, she's the one I have the most in common with. Trent is a golfer. He's lean and about 5'9". There's some arrogance to Trent that put me off at first, but I've learned to like the guy. Not sure I trust him, but he's smart, funny, and fun at these parties. Just then, I heard the doorbell ring. The guests had started to arrive. I had recently decided to move my financial planning practice to the city while keeping my coastal town office. The drive between the two locations was only 2.5 hours. My plan was to spend 1 week each month in the town, staying with my parents and meeting with clients and potential clients. So far, it was working out well. I shared an apartment with Julian Lee, a college friend who worked in IT at a large bank. Julian was very creative, so I was surprised he chose that career path. We had a 2-bedroom apartment in the trendy Maples district near downtown. I could walk to my office, and there were plenty of restaurants, bars, and boutiques within walking distance. It was definitely a young, hip, and trendy area. One of these bars is where I met Anna. Anna worked at Lucas, a popular restaurant and bar about 2 blocks from our apartment. I think it was the 3rd time Julian and I were there when I struck up a conversation with Anna. To me, she looked like a Playboy bunny, voluptuous and pretty. Anna was tending bar, and we got to talking. She asked me all kinds of questions about my life, career, goals, etc. Honestly, I was a bit surprised she was so interested in me. She was gorgeous, and I was just a plain-looking financial planner. In high school, I had a steady girlfriend, Gail Benson. Gail was attractive, smart, and fun to be with. We tried to make it work through college, but it was too difficult. I dated some in college, but never had a long-term girlfriend during those 4 years. That night, as we left the bar, I almost asked Anna out. I even got the impression she wanted me to, but I hesitated, worried she might say no, and we'd have to find a new bar to go to. "Man, she's hot," Julian said. "She's into you. You need to ask her out." "You think so?" I replied. "And you better do it quick. Someone else is going to knock you to it if you don't." The next night, I went to Lucas by myself and asked Anna out for Sunday night. And so, we started dating. I was a little intimidated. I had never been with a girl this attractive, but she gave me all the right signs that she was into me. It wasn't long before she gave me what I considered the ultimate sign, herself. Sexually, Anna was unlike anyone I'd ever been with. Up until then, I'd had a handful of sexual partners, including my high school girlfriend, Gail. I'd done some sexual exploration, but I was still an undergraduate in experience. Anna, on the other hand, had a PhD. We did everything. She was completely uninhibited, teaching me things, doing things to me, and doing things together. She wasn't overweight, but was soft, curvy, and entirely feminine. Occasionally, I wondered how she learned all these things. How experienced was she? I knew the answer. Very experienced. But I avoided the topic of her sexual history, afraid it would be too painful. Any unease I felt about this was more than outweighed by my sexual satisfaction. Everyone was sitting on our back deck. We had finished dinner, and we were all about 2 drinks into the evening. I think I was on my 3rd glass of red wine. I had a long conversation with Carl about his hopes of being named manager of the diesel shop where he worked. He mentioned that the owner was strictly religious and asked if I thought attending his church would be a good strategy to get in good with him. I told him that unless he was sincere about the religion, it might come off as disingenuous. He said he would have to think about it. As we sat talking, Sally said, "So, Anna, what's the plan for tonight?" "Okay, everyone," Anna began. "Have an open mind and remember it's just for fun. We're going to play truth or dare." I thought, oh no. But Carl, Sally, and Trent clapped and cheered, clearly approving. I looked at Anna and she smiled, then quickly glanced at Sally. Carl and Trent were grinning. Jackie had a half smile and was the only one besides me who wasn't particularly enthusiastic. It started off fairly tame with a hint of sexual innuendo. Nothing too risky. "Who was your movie star crush? How old were you when you lost your pureness?" Etc. Then it was Trent's turn to ask. He chose Anna, and she chose dare. "Sally, I dare you to take off either your shorts or your top," Trent challenged. "Wait a minute," I said. "It's okay. I have underwear on. It's like a swimsuit," Anna said. Anna loves attention, and there have been times when her behavior came close to crossing the line. While I loved the confident sexuality she shared with me, I certainly didn't want others to experience any of that closeness with Anna. She quickly whipped off her top, standing there in her lacy white bra. She stood proudly, and Trent and Carl whistled. Sally giggled. "You go, girl." Anna was loving the attention. I was a little annoyed, but I kept my thoughts to myself. The game continued, with nothing too extreme until Sally was dared to flash. Unlike me, her husband Carl encouraged her. She flashed them, and they were definitely big. Not my taste, but big. Everybody was laughing except Jackie and me. "One more round and then that's the end of this game," I said. There were a few laughs and some protests, but I was worried we might cross a line. It was Anna's turn, and she asked Trent. "Okay, dare," Trent challenged. "Flash your Johnny for 10 seconds. "Don't you dare," Jackie replied. Without hesitation, Trent stood up, unbuttoned and unzipped, then dropped his shorts and boxers. Both Anna and Sally were staring, while I was shocked and Carl was laughing. Trent even did a bit of a gyration, like a male dancer. When I looked at Anna, she was just staring at him. At this point, Jackie said, "I'm leaving." She looked a little pissed. She also told Trent he could either get in the car with his clothes on or walk home. Everyone left shortly after, officially ending the party. As we were cleaning up, Anna was unusually quiet. As we finished tidying up, I said, "That went a little too far, don't you think?" "Oh, it was just for fun. Don't be such a stick in the mud," she replied jokingly. "Anna, people were unclothed and nearly unclothed here, and you were one of them," I retorted. "Unclothed?" she said. "I'll show you unclothed." And she proceeded to strip. I was quickly and thoroughly distracted. Still, it bothered me how the party had turned out, and I was determined to have a serious discussion about the events tomorrow. I also have to admit, I'm not one of those guys who gets a thrill out of their wife exposing herself or more around other men. I fell asleep sexually satisfied, but somewhat troubled. On Sunday morning, I was up first and went for my run. During the solitude of my exercise, I planned out the conversation I was going to have with Anna. I was going to make it clear that while I enjoy fun and a good party as much as anyone, my wife and our bodies are only for us. We made that vow on our wedding day, and I wasn't going to compromise on that. When I got home, I could hear Anna on the phone. She must have heard me because the laughing stopped and the volume dropped. I thought I heard the word package just before she heard me. "Who was that?" I asked. "Oh, just Sally," she giggled. "She and Carl had a great time and rated our party as the best yet." "About that, I think we should talk about some of the things that happened last night and specifically some of your behavior. Usually, Anna was good-natured, and it took some effort to make her mad. I succeeded with my comment about her behavior. She lashed out saying it was innocent, just fun. "No one else is upset, and nothing happened," she said. I tried to stay calm and explain my feelings, but she wasn't interested. After she vented, she gave me the silent treatment. As I started my yard work, I tried to process my feelings. I really didn't think I was being unreasonable. I wanted to give her some leeway to be herself. That's the woman I married. I appreciated her free-spiritedness, but anything close should be for us alone, including who sees her body. I admit I was a little insecure. Anna is a beautiful, hot woman, and I'm just a fairly plain financial planner. I know I'm not bad-looking, and I stay in good shape, but I also know she gets hit on constantly by all kinds of guys. I had no real reason to doubt her fidelity, but there were a couple of instances before we were married that triggered my concerns. We had been dating for almost 3 months at this point, and had been having sex nearly the entire time. I felt close to Anna, and we had some good conversations where I learned about her life. Her father left when she was young, leaving her mother and an older sister. Anna craved male attention, and once her body started developing, she got plenty of it. I didn't want to delve too deeply into her sexual history, but I gathered that her pureness was gone by age 16. It seemed like she had boyfriends and casual friends she played around with. That was her term. Unsurprisingly, she never had to look far to find the next one. She loved attention and knew her looks could get that for her. We were invited to a party hosted by a casual acquaintance the following Saturday night. At this point, we hadn't formalized our exclusivity, but in my mind, we were exclusive. She had said she loved me, and to me, love and exclusivity went hand in hand. It was December, and the party was a little dressier than usual. When I saw what Anna was wearing, my eyes nearly popped out of my head. It was a red dress that barely covered her chest. "You like my dress?" she teased. "Anna, you look great, but wow, it's pretty skimpy," I replied. "You know, I'll likely have some clients there, and well, it's a little too much." Now, Anna doesn't often get mad, but when she does, it's almost always about how she looks. She got mad. She said I thought she was trashy, that I was worried she'd embarrass me, and on and on. It took some time, but I apologized. Though things were a little frosty, we went to the party, and she wore the dress. The house was large and located in the hills, beautifully decorated, with plenty to eat and drink. Some of my work colleagues were there, along with people I knew from college and others from the athletic club I belonged to. One guy at the party I remembered from college, something McAllister, was one of those arrogant, good-looking types. Confident, with a smarmy smile and slicked-back black hair, he was cruising around with that cocky grin and a glass of champagne. Then he saw Anna. Anna was getting a lot of attention, mostly from men, and most of it was focused on her cleavage. She stayed by my side, and suddenly I became popular with colleagues and casual acquaintances. At one point, I went to get us a drink. When I returned, McAllister was chatting with Anna. He acted like I was an old friend, and Anna was loving it, all the attention, and now this good-looking guy was hanging on her every word as if it were the most fascinating thing he had ever heard. I managed to steer her away from him, but as parties go, we eventually drifted apart. I was talking to some work colleagues who were sharing some useful business ideas. I realized it had been over an hour since I had last seen Anna. I took a quick look around the living room, the kitchen, and the family room off the kitchen. Nothing. I didn't want to appear agitated, but I was on a mission to find her. I also couldn't find McAllister. I noticed a group of people outside smoking and stepped into the winter air. No Anna. As I was heading back inside, I heard her laugh coming from down the street. I walked down the sidewalk, and there she was with McAllister, strolling up the street. It took her a moment to notice me, and as I watched them, they seemed to be enjoying each other's company. "Oh, hi, honey. Jim was just showing me his new BMW," she said. "She's a handful," McAllister said. "I mean the car." He laughed. I looked at Anna. Nothing seemed particularly off, but she did look a little rumpled. I forced a smile, though inside I was seething. As they walked up, Anna put her arm around me. "I'm leaving now," I said. "Just wanted to see if you needed a ride home." "Of course I want a ride home," she said, looking at me questioningly. Why wouldn't I? At that point, McAllister slapped me on the back. "Nice to see you again," he said, extending his hand. Now, I'm no bodybuilder, but I work out and have always had a strong grip. Fueled by my anger at Anna and this guy's arrogance, I gripped his hand hard. By the time he realized what was happening, I was crushing his hand. His knees buckled, and his mouth opened in a silent cry. "Honey, you're hurting Jim," Anna cried. "Oh, sorry. My bad," I said, and I started walking to the car without looking back to see if Anna was following. By the time I got to my car and buckled up, she had caught up with me. This was our first big fight. I really liked her. She was great-looking, and the sex was off the charts, at least by any standard I'd known. I knew she craved attention and measured her worth by the attention she received from men. We hadn't formalized anything at this point, but to me, a steady sexual relationship where we saw each other more than a few times a week and talked about love was the adult version of going steady. But we had never explicitly discussed it. I dropped her off, and she gave me a puzzled look when I told her I was staying at my place tonight. "Oh, honey, come on up. Nothing happened with Jim. We were just having fun," she said. "Well, I guess I've had about enough fun for one night. See you later," I said, and drove off. She called and texted, but I ignored her. Life went on for me, and I focused on my work. My week on the coast was coming up, so I decided to leave on Saturday morning instead of my usual Sunday night. I called my mom, and she was thrilled to have me for the weekend. I had a good week back in my hometown, with productive client meetings. My steady business on the coast and my growing city practice were making me successful. I was achieving my financial goals and getting noticed within my organization. A week ago, I would have said my personal life was on the right track. I couldn't say that now. She kept texting and calling, and my responses were minimal. She asked when I was getting back, and I told her Friday night. No sooner had I arrived home when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Anna standing there in a raincoat, holding a wrapped present. "This is for you," she said, handing me the gift. I opened it to find an old-fashioned skeleton key inside. "You hold the key to my heart," she said. I stared at her, feeling a mix of emotions. Then she unbelted her raincoat, revealing a figure that could have been straight out of a Playboy centerfold. Any teenage fantasy come to life. Whatever resolve I had melted away in a wave of lust. Afterward, I asked her about what had happened at the party with McAllister. "I know I shouldn't have gone outside with Jim, but he was so nice," she said. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing. He tried to get a little handsy, but I've been handling guys like that since I was 14 years old. We talked, and I told her that I can get jealous. I went on to say that if she wasn't ready for a boyfriend, I'd be sad, but I'd understand. I explained that I'm not the type to play around. I'm either in a casual relationship or fully committed. What we had, I emphasized, was not a casual relationship. She rolled on top of me and told me she was committed too. She also said she loved me and wanted to be with me forever, and then she proceeded to make love to me. Anna doesn't hold grudges, so after the truth or dare party, things returned to normal. She remained the same loving, hot woman I'd fallen for. In fact, she seemed more attentive, and I noticed less interaction with Sally when I was around. One Saturday, while I was working in the yard, Trent passed by, which wasn't unusual since he lived nearby. We struck up a conversation about lawns and gardening, eventually moving to the back deck with some drinks. Although Trent and I weren't particularly close, he was a bit cocky. We ended up talking for a while. He opened up about his custody battle, revealing a vulnerable side that made him more likable. I started to reconsider my opinion of him. Then, out of the blue, Trent asked, "Where's Anna?" I told him she was shopping, and we resumed our conversation. 15 minutes later, Anna appeared in a tiny bikini and ducked behind the privacy screen, greeting Trent as she passed. Trent, of course, couldn't resist trying to catch a glimpse. I quickly wrapped up our chat and walked him to the gate. As he left, he jokingly asked if Anna needed help with suntan lotion. The incident reminded me of a past situation with McAllister. After that, our relationship improved significantly. I'd forgiven Anna's earlier behavior, reasoning that we hadn't been fully committed at the time. Now, we were. Anna was affectionate, fun, and sexually adventurous. She was also beautiful, and I loved being seen with her in public. As time went on, Anna started hinting about our future together, which I had been thinking about too. I felt torn. On one hand, I wondered if she was the right long-term match for me. On the other, I couldn't deny she was every man's fantasy. Eventually, I decided that no one else could compare to Anna, and I proposed to her, surprising her with a Caribbean vacation. She was thrilled, calling her mom and Sally to share the news. When I told my parents, they were happy for me. Though my dad sounded a bit hesitant. The resort was incredible, with pools, bars, restaurants, and a private beach. On our first day, Anna wore a revealing bikini, drawing plenty of attention. We enjoyed drinks and a walk on the beach, then headed back for a casual meal. Afterward, slightly tipsy, we watched the sunset from our balcony where things quickly turned close. It was amazing. The resort staff were very attentive, always available to provide towels, directions, or anything else we needed. The beach boys, young men in their early 20s, catered to the guests on the lounge chairs, mostly working for tips. Their main customers were women in their 40s who enjoyed the attention. They would bring drinks, towels, move chairs, or even apply sunscreen if asked. Naturally, Anna in her skimpy bikinis caught their eye. Cruz, one of the beach boys with golden skin, a lean build, and a bright smile, was often nearby. One day, I suggested a jet ski ride, but Anna wanted to work on her tan, so I arranged an hour session on my own. After having fun on the ocean, I returned to find Cruz massaging Anna's bare back. It even seemed like he might have been touching more than just her back. "What's going on here?" I asked. Cruz quickly stood up. "I didn't want Miss Anna to get sunburned, so I was applying sunscreen," he stammered. "I'll handle it, thanks," I said, and he hurried away. "Anna, what was that about?" I asked quietly, but firmly, not wanting to cause a scene. "What do you mean?" she replied. "Your top is undone, and this guy had free access to your body. Was he feeling you up?" "Oh, relax," she said. "He might have touched the sides a bit, but my body is only for you." I pushed aside the incident with Cruz and focused on being with Anna. Soon after, I suggested a siesta, which she knew meant more. I had to carry a towel to hide my arousal as we walked back to our room. Eventually, the vacation ended, and we discussed wedding plans on the flight home. While Anna dozed, I reflected on the great trip, though I couldn't fully forget Cruz and his hands on her. After the weekend, Trent stopped by, and life returned to normal. Work was busy and rewarding, and I was building a nice nest egg. Anna still worked at Lucas, mainly lunch shifts, allowing us to spend most evenings together. She didn't need to work but enjoyed having her own money. As summer began, Anna and Sally planned the next couple's gathering after the Truth or Dare party. I hoped these parties would fade out, but they decided the next one would be at Trent and Jackie's in mid-July, a pool party. When I heard this, I immediately told Anna, "None of the bikinis from the Caribbean." "I'll wear the red one," she suggested. "No way," I insisted. "Strangers seeing you like that is one thing, but not our friends." She didn't argue, and I thought the issue was settled. However, on the Tuesday before the party, I got a call from my mom. My dad had a heart attack and needed bypass surgery. I rushed home with Anna, who held my hand to calm me on the way to the hospital. I worried about both my dad and how my mom would handle things without his steady presence. When we arrived, we found out the surgery was successful, and Dad was expected to make a full recovery. I stayed with him that night while Anna and my mom went home to rest. The next day, Dad was in good spirits, solving a crossword puzzle. We spent the day at the hospital, but it was uneventful. I could tell Anna was bored, so I suggested she head back home. Anna hesitated, but eventually agreed to leave that afternoon. Thursday was spent helping my parents get settled. I watched baseball with Dad, and we admitted it was boring but necessary. On Friday, I called Anna. She asked when I'd be home, and I told her not until Sunday at the earliest. She reminded me about the party, which I had forgotten. I apologized and asked if she still planned to go. She wasn't sure, but mentioned Sally and Jackie's sister were pressuring her. Saturday came, and Dad seemed exhausted. I suggested he rest while I helped Mom around the house. I spent several hours setting up storage racks in the basement until Mom called me for dinner. I joined her at the table. "Dad's already asleep," she said softly. "Good, he needs the rest." I nodded. After dinner, I returned to organizing the storage shelves, losing track of time until I realized it was nearly 10 p.m. "I need to call Anna," I muttered, dialing her number. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked when she answered. There was noise in the background. "Hi, honey, I'm at Trent and Jackie's. We're having a great time," she replied, sounding distracted. "That's right, the party is tonight," I remembered. "How's my dad?" There was a pause. Then I heard a high-pitched scream and giggling. "What's going on?" I asked, growing concerned. "What, honey?" She laughed, clearly enjoying herself. "How much have you had to drink?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "The connection isn't great," she said, her voice cutting in and out. "Can I call you back?" "I'll call you back," I said, frustrated. But before I could hang up, the line stayed open. Suddenly, I heard Trent's voice clearly say, "Get that top off, too," followed by laughter. I thought I heard Anna's voice, but it was unclear. Then the call disconnected. It was obvious they weren't just playing games. What the hell is going on? I wondered aloud, too tired to drive home, but needing answers. I decided to call Henry Anderson, an old neighbor. "Hey, Henry, can you do me a favor? Take some photos of what's happening at Trent and Jackie's. I need to know what's going on." "On it," Henry replied. I gave him directions, explaining where to position himself to capture their backyard. "Thanks, man," I said, relieved. I finished my work, turned off my phone, and went to bed, too exhausted to think. The next morning, I found several photos from Henry waiting for me. They were worse than I imagined. Photo 1, Anna completely unclothed with Trent. Photo 2, Carl unclothed, grabbing Anna. Photo 3, Anna and Sally, both unclothed, dancing for Trent and Carl. Photo 4, Trent having sex with Anna, I muttered as I scrolled through them. This is irrefutable proof of Anna's infidelity, I thought, feeling numb. I need to end this marriage, protect my assets, and get back at Trent and Carl. Around noon, Anna called, sounding affectionate. "I miss you. How's your dad? When are you coming home? I really need you," she said. I nearly confronted her but held back. "I'm going to find a way to get even," I decided. "I just need a plan." "Dad's taken a turn for the worse," I lied. "I need to stay another week." "Oh, no," she said, concerned. "Do you need me to come up?" "No, it's best if you don't. Dad can't handle the excitement," I replied. That Monday night, I left for the city and called my old roommate Julian to see if I could stay with him for a few days. "Sure, JT," he said, surprised but accommodating. When I arrived, he mentioned his brother was visiting from New York on Thursday. "He's thinking about changing careers," Julian explained. "Interesting," I replied, before telling him everything that had happened and showing him the photos. Julian was shocked. "I knew Anna was flirty, but I didn't think she'd cheat," he said. "I want to get even with Anna and the whole group," I admitted, "but I need to keep this from Anna until I have a plan." Julian nodded. "I won't say a word." The next day, I waited outside Carl's building. When I saw him heading to his truck, I waved. "Carl, let's grab a beer," I suggested. He was surprised, but agreed. We went to a nearby tavern with few patrons. After ordering beers, I leaned in. "What happened Saturday night?" I asked. "Just another typical party," Carl shrugged. "This is typical?" I asked, showing him one of Henry's photos. "Hey, man, the girls took their clothes off. It didn't mean anything," Carl said, trying to downplay it. "Okay, no big deal," I said, then leaned in closer. "But what do you think your boss would say about this?" Carl froze, knowing his boss was very religious and that he was desperate for a promotion. He stood to leave, but I shoved him back into his seat. "Sit down and shut up," I ordered. "I have questions, and unless you want your boss to see these photos, you're going to tell me everything." Carl looked desperate. Okay, he agreed. We sat for over an hour as he told me about Anna. Anna and Sally were in the poorer group in high school, he explained. The wealthier kids teased them for their outdated clothes and old cars, but they knew their looks gave them an edge. Anna was beautiful, and Sally had a large chest which made them popular, Carl continued, his tone a mix of resignation and bitterness. By 15, they both had boyfriends and probably lost their pureness around then. I clenched my fists but stayed silent, letting him talk. Later in high school, after several short relationships, Sally told me about a conversation with Anna. Anna said, "All I want are nice clothes, a nice car, and a nice house. I like Zex, so I don't mind trading it for material things. I'll find a man who can give me that. The wealthier, the better." My stomach turned as Carl spoke. "So, she's always been like this?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Yeah," Carl nodded. "When you two started dating, she had a boyfriend. She told Sally she thought you had better prospects, so she dated you while still seeing the other guy for about 3 months. I felt a surge of anger. "So she was with both of us at the same time?" I asked, my voice rising. "Yeah," Carl said, sipping his beer. "And since you've been married, I know of at least 2 other guys she's been with." I almost choked on my drink. "Who?" I demanded. Carl shrugged. "I don't know all the details, but one was a guy named McCallum or something." "She said you knew him." My mind immediately pictured McAllister, the guy we met at a party before we got married. I sat there fuming, while Carl casually drank his beer, unfazed by the bombshell he had just dropped. "So if someone wealthier with a nicer car and house came along, Anna would leave me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yeah, she would," Carl confirmed without hesitation. I sat in silence, processing everything. Finally, I asked, "What happened on Saturday? Was Jackie involved?" Carl shook his head. "No, Jackie left early because her sister's boyfriend got into a fight. That's when the rest of the group started." "So Jackie doesn't know what happened?" I asked, feeling slightly relieved. "No, and don't tell her," Carl insisted. I nodded, then asked, "Does it bother you that Sally's with other guys?" Carl snorted. "Wife? We're not married. Sally calls me her husband, but we've never been married. I care about her, but marriage? Not with her. That's why we don't have kids." It was time to go. I had a lot to think about. Anna wasn't just promiscuous. She was with me for financial security and would leave if a better option appeared. Only Carl knew what I knew, and it would stay that way for now. Even Carl, as clueless as he seemed, was smarter than me about women. Back at Julian's place, I told him everything Carl had shared. Sadness quickly turned to anger, and I felt embarrassed. How many people had laughed at me behind my back? Julian asked a few questions, then plugged into his headphones and started working on his laptop. I sat there drinking wine and getting angrier. After a while, Julian unplugged and asked, "Has she ever met John Paul?" "No," I replied, confused. "I haven't seen him since college. Why?" Julian just shook his head and plugged back in. A few minutes later, he looked up with a sly smile. "Can you get $30,000 quickly?" he asked. "Yes, but why?" I asked, intrigued, but cautious. "And I need you to lease a BMW for 6 months if this works," he added, typing rapidly. "Why?" I asked again, more curious. Julian leaned back, grinning. "I have a plan. It'll cost you $30,000 in a BMW lease, but it'll be worth it." I listened as Julian explained. "Go home to Anna tomorrow and act normal. Come back here on Thursday after work. John Paul will be here." The next day I called Anna and said, "I'll be home tonight." I did my best to act normal, blaming any odd behavior on worrying about my dad. Either I was a better actor than I thought, or she just didn't pay much attention. Thursday night, I met Julian and John Paul at Julian's condo. After some pleasantries, Julian laid out the plan. John Paul would seduce Anna, posing as a wealthy New York investment banker, and get her to fall for him. "John Paul has 5 months before his play starts, so he has to pull this off by then," Julian explained. John Paul, a good-looking guy with a magnetic smile, looked at me seriously. "Are you okay if I sleep with her? I mean, she is your wife." I stared at him, feeling detached. "I don't care. After 5 months, you'll probably be having sex within days." With that, we started planning. I gave them Anna's work schedule and emphasized the need for secrecy. The week passed without incident. I watched for any change in Anna, but she seemed normal. Yes, we had sex, but it felt routine, fulfilling yet exhausting. On Thursday night, we met at Julian's condo again. I was eager for an update, torn between wanting Anna to fall for John Paul and hoping she wouldn't. John Paul began, "I've been to Lucas 3 times. First, I made sure she noticed me. Second, we had some light conversation. Third, we exchanged names. She said she works 11 to 3, he continued. Tomorrow, I'll show up at 2 for a late lunch and coffee with her. I had to buy a $1,200 suit to play the part. The next week passed uneventfully, though I couldn't stop thinking about what was happening between Anna and John Paul. One afternoon, I noticed Anna was home late and wondered why. It felt like waiting for the next episode of a favorite TV show. I was eager to hear the latest update on Thursday night. John Paul began his report with a grin. We had coffee on Friday. Anna mentioned she's married but hinted at problems making herself seem available. We set a lunch date for Tuesday. He explained that he subtly hinted at his wealth, revealing it gradually. Meanwhile, I started noticing Anna becoming cooler towards me, which was a good sign. On the day of their lunch date, I got home after 5, but Anna wasn't there. After a run, I came back and she still hadn't arrived. As I was making dinner, she finally walked in. "Hi, honey, how was your day?" I asked, curious about her response. "Oh, I ended up working late," she replied, trying to sound casual. I knew she hadn't worked, but I played along. We were drifting apart, and I let it happen. The sex was still good, but it felt more physical than emotional, making it easy to fake. I made things easier for her. "Dad needs some help," I said. "I have to leave Friday afternoon." "Should I come with you?" she asked, but her offer was half-hearted. "No, it's fine," I replied. "I'm just helping out and staying through next week to meet clients." Thursday night, John Paul told me their lunch date had turned into a kissing session. "She mentioned you'd be out of town, so we made plans for Friday night," he said with a confident smile. "She's definitely interested." I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and satisfaction that the plan was working. It was like pulling the strings, and everything was unfolding as I intended. But a small part of me still couldn't believe this was really happening. As the weeks passed, Anna and John Paul's relationship progressed as expected. By the weekend, I was certain they had slept together. I stayed at my parents' house, conveniently out of the way while she was with him. No surprise there. At home, Anna began to pull away from me. It was bittersweet, but necessary. Occasionally, I'd see glimpses of the woman I once loved, which made me sad, but those moments were brief. After about 3 months, John Paul started expressing his love to Anna, asking for a commitment. By then, she was fully convinced he was a wealthy New York investment banker with a pricey Manhattan apartment. "When she talks about you, it's clear she's moved on," John Paul reported one evening. "She said the relationship is over, but hasn't had that conversation with you yet." A few weeks later, Anna casually asked, "Sally and I are planning a spa weekend in California. Is that okay?" I knew John Paul had invited her to Sun Valley for the weekend. "Sure, have fun," I said, pretending not to know. That night, she was unusually affectionate, almost as if trying to compensate for something. I couldn't help but think about how clueless she was about what was really happening. John Paul planned to propose during the Idaho trip with a $500 cubic zirconium ring that looked convincingly real. Anna wouldn't suspect a thing. At our Thursday meeting, John Paul reported, "She accepted the proposal," showing me a photo of Anna beaming with the ring. "She said she'll talk to you about leaving this week." This was the moment I had been waiting for. My plan was to act devastated, fight her on it, and drag out the process just long enough to make her desperate for a quick exit, ensuring she'd agree to my terms and protect my assets. When Anna finally approached me, she was hesitant. "JT, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. I looked up, pretending to be clueless. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "I think it's time for us to separate. I've met someone else, and I want to be with him." I acted shocked, my voice trembling. "What? We're married, Anna. I can't believe this." She avoided my gaze. "I'm sorry, JT, but it's over. I need to move on." I switched from shock to anger. "I won't let you leave," I shouted. "We need counseling to work this out." She was surprised by my reaction, but I could see she was eager to end things quickly, which was exactly what I was counting on. A few days later, she came home with a document, placing it on the table between us. "This is what I'm suggesting," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'll give up any claim to your assets, our house, your vehicle, everything. All I ask for is an immediate divorce." I put on the performance of a lifetime, pretending to be utterly shattered. "I can't believe you're doing this," I whispered, my eyes red from fake tears summoned with a few drops of Visine. "But if this is really what you want..." I signed the papers with a trembling hand, making sure to maintain the act until the very end. As she took the documents and left, I couldn't help but notice a spring in her step. She thought she was about to start a new life with a wealthy man in New York. But in reality, she was walking into the final stage of the plan. It was mid-September, and our divorce would be finalized on October 5th. Anna had relinquished any interest in my assets and believed she'd be moving to New York and married by the end of October. We met at Julian's that Thursday to finalize the plan. John Paul would stay at the rented condo for the next 2 weeks, maintaining the charade. On the Friday they were supposed to leave for New York, Anna would return to our house to gather her clothes and belongings. John Paul would tell her he'd meet her there with a moving truck, but of course, he'd never show up. By the time she realized what was happening, John Paul would be gone, and so would her dreams of a new life. John Paul told her his last name was Taylor, Julian explained, a smirk on his face. She'll have a hard time finding him, and it'll be expensive. She'll be close to broke. John Paul nodded, a bit of sympathy in his eyes. This is pretty harsh, man, he said to me. Are you sure about this? I met his gaze without hesitation. Not nearly as harsh as what she did to me, I replied coldly. I get it, he said, sighing. But I'll miss that piece of meat. She was as good as it gets. I sighed too. Yeah, I'll miss it too, I admitted, though the truth was I was more than ready to move on. In the weeks that followed, my interactions with Anna were polite, but distant. I had to fake remorse a few times, but I never asked her to reconsider staying with me. I was afraid she might say yes. On the Friday she was supposed to leave, I met her at the house as she packed up her things. Part of me considered trying to get one last session in bed, but I knew it was over. She was dressed up, clearly thinking she was about to begin a new chapter of her life. Do you need any help with the packing? I offered, keeping my voice neutral. No, I'm fine, she said with a smile, eager to be done with this part of her life. By 12:30 p.m., she made her first call to John Paul. I watched her expression change from confusion to frustration as the call didn't go through. The number's been disconnected, she muttered, redialing. She turned to me, her face pale. Can I use your phone? She asked. Sure, I said, handing it to her, watching as she tried again, only to get the same result. She called the luxury condo where John Paul had been staying, but they told her the condo had been paid through Saturday and was now available for rent again. Panic began to set in. I'm going to drive back to the condo and see what's going on, she said, her voice trembling. Can I leave my stuff here for now? Of course, I replied, keeping my tone calm. Take your time. She left in a hurry, and I didn't hear from her the rest of the weekend. I knew exactly what she was going through: confusion, panic, and eventually the realization that she had been played. While she was dealing with that, I set phase 2 of the plan into motion. I sent out 3 packets containing photos from the Zex party she had participated in while I was with my dad. In the photos, Trent, Sally, Carl, and Anna were all clearly identifiable, faces and bodies fully exposed. Packet 1 went to Carl's deeply religious boss with a note that read, I believe a man's moral character is reflected in the quality of the work they do. Don't you? Packet 2 was sent to Trent's ex-wife with a note that said, Look at what your ex is up to. Thank goodness the children are with you. Packet 3 went to Jackie with a note that said, I guess you and I missed the best part yet. Sorry to bring you this news, but you deserve to know. Once things calm down, would you like to get a drink? I signed all the notes with my name and phone number. I had one more bit of unfinished business, McAllister. I considered asking Julian to come up with something for him, too. Of course, Anna eventually tried to rekindle our relationship. She showed up the following Monday night as if she were just getting home from work. Hi, honey. Sorry about our little misunderstanding, she said with a forced smile. I'm home for good. I stared at her coldly. Anna, you destroyed my life, I said, my voice filled with contempt. This is not your home. You were planning to run off with someone to New York, remember? No, I've changed my mind, she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. It's you I want. I was done acting. Forget it, I said bluntly. Get the hell out of here and never come back. She resorted to her old tactics, quickly stripping off her top and unhooking her bra, trying to seduce me like she had done countless times before. But I was done. As I shut the door in her face, I said, Say hi to John Paul for me. I glanced out the window and saw her standing there, a blank expression on her face as she tried to figure out the meaning behind my mention of John Paul. In all our conversations, his real name had always been kept secret. She was starting to understand just how thoroughly she had been deceived. As I took one last look, I noticed Henry Anderson leaning over the fence, getting an eyeful of Anna standing there bare-chested. I chuckled to myself. Last I heard, Anna was living with Sally. I'm sure she'll be auditioning for the next guy who isn't thinking with the right body part. As for Carl, not only did he not get the promotion, but I also heard he was fired. He left town shortly after, abandoning Sally. Trent was another story. When he went to court for the custody hearing, he was soundly denied and lost even more visitation rights. Apparently, the photos played a significant role in that decision. One Saturday night, I got a frantic call from Jackie. "Trent's coming to your house," she said, her voice trembling. "He's drunk and has a weapon. He knows you sent those photos." I quickly snuck out to the backyard, grabbing some blankets and pillows. I made a fake body under the blankets on the chaise lounge, leaving a small light on to lure him. I hid in the thick bushes on the other side of the privacy screen, armed with a baseball bat. Even if Jackie hadn't called, I would have heard him coming. Trent pounded on the front door, and when I didn't answer, he came through the gate into the backyard. He immediately spotted the lounge chair setup and crept over, firing twice into the blankets. The first swing of the bat broke his arm, and he dropped the weapon, howling in pain. I swung again, aiming for his lap, determined to neutralize that particular threat too. Then I called the police. With the weapon and shots fired, there wasn't much investigation needed. I was defending myself, and Trent was facing attempted liquidation charges. I called Jackie to thank her for the warning. "You're welcome," she said, her voice still shaky. "Now about that drink you mentioned,